Starting now.
Okay, well, hello everyone. I am not the resident of Collinwood. I am Gordon Demowski with my good friend and uh, fellow raconteur Patrick McRae, and we're hosting Jules' podcast. Jewel has an ouchie on his foot. He also claimed to have been in. The words he used were Tijuana Donkey Show, so I don't know. I'm. We're not judging here, but in order to provide you, the YouTube viewer,
It's
with
already on there. It's
with good entertainment, we thought we would do a double feature of two movies that we have selected that we think are interesting or provocative, and we encourage you to seek these movies out and watch them yourself. I know one of them is available on YouTube if you dig deeply enough.
and the Internet Archive.
Okay, Internet Archive, and so Patrick, which movie should we start with?
I chose the most ludicrous viewing viewing order, which was Pink Flamingos. I think if people get through the Pink Flamingos thing, they have earned the Dinner with Andre.
Well, okay, yeah. So let's start talking Pink Flamingos by John Waters.
Because there's a meal in that.
Yep. Now is there a meal in that? It's a fun film for the entire family. Put the kids in front.
Massey had been at the Dinner with Andre, just insisting on eggs, more eggs. my Dinner with Edith. You could just cut the two movies together. It's Wally Shawn nodding as Edith Massey's talking about eggs.
You could have Andre talking about his weird experiences, and then you cut to the chicken scene. Or maybe when at the end when Wallace Shawn orders the coffee and then the amaretto, you cut to the very last scene with Divine.
Does it have bones? Does it have bones? No, it doesn't have bones.
So I'm going to do my impersonation of Jewel. My very unflattering impersonation of Jewel.
Oh no.
So Patrick, when did you first see Pink Flamingos?
I saw it at the Vogue, which was that movie theater down the street, and it would routinely show this movie. And I think Female Trouble and Desperate Living and things like that. It was on a double feature. And I had run into a colleague in the lobby of my mother's, because I was only in, like maybe seventh or eighth grade. And but I had read, I think it was a book by Danny Perry called Cult Movies, where I'd learned about John Waters. I'd seen him on a few talk shows. I think he'd been on Letterman by then and things like that. So he was establishing himself sort of in his second career as a raconteur. He had written some stuff for National Lampoon, a very funny piece that shows up in one of his books of essays called 101 Things I Hate, which I would perform at speech competitions. It was just terrific. Anyway, so I was familiar with John Waters. I was familiar with Divine. I think I'd seen Lust in the Dust and things like that. But now was the King Kahuna. And my mother was pretty liberal with what she would let me go see. And I just walked up the street and I saw it. And I ran into one of her colleagues, one of her English department colleagues, who was very much a friend of Dorothy's. And man, he ratted on me the next day. Apparently said, "Susan, do you know what kind of movies John Waters makes? Do you know what goes on in those films?" Oh, Lord, she was furious. She was so furious, she wouldn't even say whatever it was he had described went on in the film. But I think he mischaracterized it a little. The film has such a satirical bent. Waters was once asked about the effects his movies would have on kids. And he said, kids love my movies. And I said, my God, why? He said, well, to kids, all sex is ridiculous. And I thought, what a wise thing. What a wise thing of Waters to say. And nowhere is it more ridiculous than in this film. So I kind of knew what I was getting into. And only a few things shocked me. The actual fellatio that we see in the film, I wasn't expecting that, because the line there is very unclear. Short Bus would later kind of just, run right off with it. Of course, the infamous ooh mau 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 dance was, when Jewel likes to ask, what were you most shocked by? Okay, now that was shocking. I didn't even know the human body could do that. So things like that. But that's when I first saw it. I knew what I was getting into, and I laughed my head off, as did the audience. They loved it.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Well, I first saw it when I saw it in the early 90s, and I knew about John Waters because I would always see his commercials for his films on television, and I had that kind of, sense in the air about what he did. But the woman I was dating at the time said, hey, you wanna hang around and watch a movie? And I thought, sure. And she said, well, have you ever seen Pink Flamingos? And I'm like, no.
I like this lady so far.
Well, and she's, when we get to that scene, she's talking about how, hey, look, it's the butt dancing scene. And, in watching it, the first thing I love is that John Waters just does not care. You know what I mean? He's a great filmmaker, but he's like, you know what? I don't care whether you like this or not. I'm just going where I'm going to go.
It's very low budget Irwin Allen. Just a thrill
Yes.
in it. What can I show him?
Mm-hmm. And no werewolves.
No werewolves.
Yeah. But and it struck me as like what struck me about it at the time. First, I was hoping that maybe she was trying to hint at getting somewhere, and she wasn't. So she has a partner. I'm not gonna go further than that. But what struck me about it is that I like the fact that Waters, it not does it have a satirical bent, but he has a sense of, he knows just what buttons to push. Like with the chicken scene. I know some people have said that the guy is actually doing rude things to a chicken. To me, I thought it looked very fake.
It looked like it was tied. I mean, I didn't get the idea that the chicken was that uncomfortable.
It looked fake to me, but I am not going to argue. But yeah, I think too, Waters has a sensibility. I mean, like now he's kind of an elder statesman, and I know he's, after 20 some years, he's going to be doing another picture. But I think this is one where, even in his most innocuous films, the rough edges are not sanded down.
They're not, and he knows just how to handle them. I mean, okay, so now we immediately run headlong into the word camp. Because you've got to contend with it in talking about these things. And in all of this, there's a wonderful definition of camp, which I've probably given before. It's from Christopher Isherwood. And it's, camp is not making fun of something. Camp is making fun out of something. And the way that, Divine and her enemies deliver mock horror and mock indignation and so on and so forth, it is so clear that these are good actors, and that they are having tremendous fun with this really nightmarish landscape of tropes that they've completely turned inside out. Even the bad acting is done with tremendous taste. It is a parody of acting, but it's not it somehow doesn't feel heavy-handed. It feels like it is just cut perfectly, and that they are having the right kind of fun.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I love that about it.
Yeah. There's never a sense of like in the early 2000s, there was a series of parody movies, like scary movie, superhero movie, and they'd go for the gross out, but it was more like, hey, look, we're gross, da da. Here, even though there's a lot that's transgressive, it never feels like it's, hey, look how transgressive we're being. It's like, okay, let's just do it.
It feels organic.
Yeah,
in its own weird way. And the context is of people competing to be the filthiest people alive.
Right.
So that automatically puts a frame around the attempt to do these things. Whereas, in like Date Movie, which is really one of the only of those I've seen, and is one of the worst, most unfunny, most unpleasant, revolting films I've ever seen. There was something really profoundly disturbing about seeing Allison Hannigan's body treated like something in a chop shop, and that is this result of weight loss. John Waters would have had her revel in her fat,
right?
And there is a bizarre decadent joy, and I think it's that it is it's depicting the ludicrous joy that fetishists take in the strange, and that there is an authentic love of their work that's going on there, and that if there's any judgment that's being passed, it's a judgment of, boy, these people are having a good time, no matter what they're saying, rather than, oh, look at this, isn't sex disgusting? It's like, well, yes, and?
Okay, so quick question.
Yeah.
First thoughts, don't edit yourself. Divine as Angelique on Dark Shadows. Go.
Great. Oh, my God. I think she would get it. I think she would get the eyes flaring and the nostrils and the sense of indignation and the casting of the spells and I'm going to get you, Sarah, and all of that. Oh, my God. I think she would be the ultimate Angelique. Yeah. Oh, my Lord.
Okay, Jewel. Now you got to go see Pink Flamingos, and whatever your opinion is, it's wrong. Patrick's right. You're wrong. There we go. Yeah, I mean, this film is just it's not a film for the faint of heart, but not because it's so extreme. It's because we live at a time where everything is so calculated and so, even like comedy story beats are planned out. This is a movie that just kind of like pedal to the metal just goes through.
It is true spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely pure spectacle. I don't know what just happened there. Sorry. It is absolute pure spectacle, and I love that about it. Hang on. And you look at all this Marvel crap with all this digital stuff flying all over the screen and so on and so forth, and to me that's not spectacle. That's just how much of a cartoon can we make, because those things are just cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like with Pink Flamingos, it has, and this may sound like I'm going completely left off rail, but it's kind of like the third man, in that the way they use their settings, because the third man is in post-war Vienna, which is really run down. Basically, Pink Flamingos is like trailer parks and like kind of real places. There's a sense of solid geography, and it feels grounded in a way that that a lot of CGI generated backgrounds don't have.
There's an accidental detail in this movie that I love. It's where the Eggman is courting Edith Massey, and you can see their breath, and you can see how cold it is. And the reality of that, and the reality that these are people who are so deep set into their weirdness that cold doesn't matter. Normal human concerns are so far beyond them, and in that sense, it's kind of like the Cenobites. Oh, pain, we're beyond pain. They're beyond creature comforts.
Yeah, it is a really great movie. It's the Citizen Kane of John Waters films.
It's awfully good. Now, I don't know if I like this, or was it Female Trouble, that has the weird little empire that's made. It's I don't think Divine's in that one. There is one that Divine is not in, and I think it's either Desperate Living or Female Trouble. I'm fairly certain. I think it deals with Mortville. That I haven't seen that one in like 30 years, but I really enjoyed that. And at the time, he had already made. By the time I saw this, he had already made. He had already made Polyester, which was much more of a legit sort of movie. And again, just this celebration of William Castle-esque weirdness.
Because he has the one with what? Smell-O-Vision?
Yeah,
Odorama.
A friend of mine had an Odorama card signed by Tab Hunter.
Ooh.
Tab had been opening a Rally's or something like that in Louisville, a burger joint or something, and my friend went and met him there. I thought that would have been, I could have died a happy man having had that cultural experience.
Yeah. Now, if you were to do an Odorama card for this podcast, what odors would you put on it?
Well, shisha.
Mm-hmm.
Various aromas from the cat.
Right.
That are unwanted.
I'd throw in steak and bourbon.
Yes, steak and bourbon. What else? What would you mean do you mean this episode, or
no,
just
I mean this podcast in general?
In general, Jules's laundry.
Yes.
Usually, there's a fresh pile of laundry somewhere that's been done. So that would definitely be there. Yeah.
What kind of fabric softener do you think Jewel uses?
I don't know. I guess Snuggles or something. I've never really gone that far. I mean, he and his wife seem to run a perfectly clean house. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in it, but they got a lot of people living there. So, but I think probably the scent of mac and cheese. She apparently makes a killer beef stew.
Oh yeah, beef stew definitely.
Yeah. So I think probably surprisingly good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then I'd probably throw in for myself Aqua Velva, because I smell like a cheesy man from the 1970s. No jokes, people.
Lilac Vegetal man.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna go for that, I go back to like the 40s.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so any other thoughts about
Pink Flamingos? It's in the National Film Registry, which I think is more. I think that says more good about America.
Yes.
Than anything else I can think of. I love the fact that America, at least was, maybe still is, open-hearted enough that this movie could exist. I don't know who would make it now, or if it would just be too self-conscious. I think you had to come from a world without John Waters to be John Waters. But so open-hearted the movie could be made, and that it's a legitimately good movie. I mean, is this a movie that makes me want to watch it again? Yes. That's my definition, sort of by default, of a good movie, because a bad movie is a movie, because a lot of movies people say are bad. I don't think are bad. I think they're different, but they're not necessarily bad. Is a movie I don't want to see again.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I think it's full of life and passion and ambition, and in its own way, it's like a big episode of Dallas.
Yeah, yeah, and there's never a dull moment in the film.
No, there isn't. He really paces it very well. You would think that just degradation after degradation would get dull. And it was the threat of that that made me, I still haven't seen like a low down dirty shame or something like that, because that was a movie that when I saw it advertised just really felt like it existed just for shock. And maybe I should give it a glance.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah. Yeah, in this, it really exists. It is a soap opera.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's shift gears and look at the other movie that we are highlighting, which is it's a palate cleanser, if you will.
It is. It is.
Uh, and we're talking My Dinner with Andre.
The most parodied concept of a movie, which Andy Kaufman did a very good parody called My Breakfast with Blassie.
Mm-hmm.
The almost it is a movie that sort of is almost parodying itself as it's being made, as it's unfolding in front of you, and yet it has a weird authenticity and sincerity to it that somehow, again, like Pink Flamingos, makes it rise above assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
It is a movie that should, like Pink Flamingos, should not be good, that should immediately collapse under the weight of its own concept, but it doesn't. I still don't understand all of Andre Gregory's hallucinations. Like, to me, some of the weirdest stuff are just him describing these hallucinations and trying to figure out where those come from in a world where drugs are not also mentioned. Uh, but I have, since I first saw the movie when I was a kid and I saw it on PBS, I have known people who have talked in those terms. Yeah, I was driving down the street and birds were flying out of my mouth, and okay. But I think
Yeah.
it's an honest movie. I think it's a very honest movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of had a different reaction because I didn't really care for it.
Had you seen it before? Was this a
No, I
first?
had not. This was my
Oh,
first.
okay, good. So tell me about what it was like to watch it.
Um, well, I wanted to give this movie another title, which is when the hell will when the hell will Andre shut up? Because it felt like a lot of the movie, what should have been a good two-way conversation, which doesn't really happen towards the end. It's just Andre Gregory talking and talking and talking, and Wallace Shawn goes that. And I love when towards the end, Wallace Shawn actually takes him on some stuff. I mean, I was waiting for one of two things to happen. One would have been, Wallace Shawn grabs like a fork and like just starts stabbing at Andre with it, to break up the monotony. The other, and this is maybe a little bit more hallucinogenic, is that I wanted Larry David to come in and turn it into an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
It does have that quality of, Larry talking to Jeff
Mm-hmm.
about what we just saw. Um, this is a movie when I saw it initially as a kid, that was my reaction. I thought, God, what a sack of wind. And why is he saying all this weird stuff? Who would go off and do these things and so on and so forth? Um, Having gone through a very avant-garde theatrical education, especially as a directing candidate, with someone who was on a Jerzy Grotowski, Andre Gregory level of fame, knowing then who Jerzy Grotowski was and what these happenings were like and so on and so forth, I at least was familiar with the culture that was being cited with all of that. At least I was like, oh, okay, this is the world it's rooted in. And so I've seen the movie 3 times. The second time I saw, no, I've seen it more than that, but the second time I saw it credibly, I liked it much more because I knew what to expect. I knew that it was not a dialogue. It was not dinner with Andre and Wallace. It was my dinner with Andre, and that Andre was going to be this powerhouse, because even in theater at the time, Andre Gregory was the big deal. So he was very much a respected alpha in New York theater. And while I still to this day don't quite understand those kind of happenings, I at least know respectable people who've done them.
Mm-hmm.
And that they have had these bizarre, profound artistic experiences. I don't know how I would react. I think it would be like a Woody Allen movie or something, like Bananas, where he's off in the forest. But maybe I would experience that kind of surrender to what's going on. And so for me, when I watch the movie, it's like, oh, this is what I would be like if I were profound. Maybe I'm glad I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of little truths I like in the movie. I love the story of Kozan and Kozan's corruption, this monk that they bring in who just becomes wild and decadent, which makes me think a lot of Dalai Lama, with his fancy shoes and his fancy glasses, and how when you start to research the Dalai Lama, there's a lot more decadence going on there than we're kind of led to believe. I really I appreciate where he's talking about having gone to I guess it's maybe a Bergman movie, and the character says something akin to, I can live within my art much more easily than I can live within my life. That I got. That's something that was really resonant. It's a movie where the peaks of insight that do happen are nice enough that I'm nice. What a stupid word, but are profound enough that I put up with the rest. And there's this one other moment in the movie I really love. I love all the Wally Shawn stuff, and him just talking about his trying to get through life at a very basic level. Because we're talking about, the Maslow's hierarchy gone nuts. Like, what actually happens to you at the top of Maslow's hierarchy? What would have happened to Wally Shawn had he had money for his entire life?
Mm-hmm.
But I love it where he's talking about going back to the public theater and how everyone's saying how great he looks, because he's got the tan shirt and the tan skin and so on and so forth. And this one woman was divorced enough from the legend of Andre Gregory and so on that she could actually see how miserable he was. And that moment of connection, when that one person can look at you and say, like, what the hell's wrong with you? That's very, that I like. That was very true. So those are things I like in it.
Yeah, and to give Wallace Shawn a lot of credit, I know that this was one of his first, if not his first, movie role. And if you're used to him in his like kind of persona, his usual persona, you would think that he's like playing a role, but there's a real honesty about him. I kind of wished that this movie were My Dinner with Andre the Giant, because it'd be a great prequel to The Princess Bride.
It'd be a wonderful prequel to The Princess. I'm sure they made that joke on the set. Well, you know how they made this movie? They record. I think it was Louis Malle's idea initially, and they just recorded conversations that the two of them had, and then the two of them kind of sat down and edited it together with Louis Malle into a script. So there actually was a script to the movie. And there are many more conversations, and so really what I would love to read is an annotated script that would talk through, okay, here's this section, this is what led to this was the conversation around it, here's a summary of what we didn't talk about related to it, because it's okay. Another thing I like about this movie is this movie reminds me a lot of Primer, in that it's not a warm and fuzzy movie, but I appreciate that it exists, and I appreciate that you're getting something very authentic in it, even in its unwatchable weirdness at times. I like its complete uniqueness and its willingness to say, you know what? You've gotten so used to movies being either this, or this. What if a movie is this? What if it's this thing over here? You don't even have to like it. It's just heartening for me to know that the medium can support something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it was a hard movie for me to get through simply because I think Andre Gregory is such a powerful presence in like the first hour or so. And I understand why, but I also like the fact that with Sean becomes almost the voice of reason, where Gregory's
Yeah.
going out there and it's yeah, and he's talking about how he's going back home to his girlfriend Debbie to tell her about his dinner with Andre. And I'm sure that once he closed the door, he told her, "Man, that dude needs to shut the hell up. Man, I wish I had a golf club so I could whack him in the bro basket. You know, that kind of thing."
Let me ask you a question. Given your training in psychology, what things are actually going on with Andre Gregory? If this were a patient or a client, I guess you don't call them
Well,
patients,
well,
clients.
well, it's been a while since I've done psych work.
Sure.
So
Given
I
that,
right. I just I think it might just be that my take without getting too clinical, because I don't like throwing diagnostic labels around. He may just be someone who's so used to being in his head a lot that he doesn't stop to think that like other people are out there. You know
okay.
what I mean? I don't
So
think
you're
it's
talking about his comportment towards Wally Shawn
right.
at the dinner.
Yeah, I don't think he sees it because Andre's the one who initiates the dinner and
It does.
wanted to catch up after several years. So I don't think he necessarily is thinking, hey, maybe Wallace would like to get a word in edgewise. It's like, oh, I did all this cool stuff and da 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 da. So I don't think it's a mental health issue. I just think it's when you're in your own head for a while, it's like, you forget that other people are out there. It would be, like if I were addressing the camera right now and just the camera, it'd be easy for me in a state to not realize that you were there because you're just a person on the screen. Or if Jewel were to come in, I'd probably think, oh, great. Now we're going to talk about wrestling all day. And
I would be happy, Jewel. I would be so happy.
and Jewel, we did get in a wrestling reference. So,
I mentioned Blassie, Fred
yeah,
Blassie.
Blassie and Andre the Giant. Okay, and here is just because Jewel does this every single podcast, no matter what. Here's our only gratuitous reference to the Halloween movie franchise. We're done.
How would Andre Gregory have been as Sam Lewis's brother?
I see him more as a victim of Michael Myers. Mike's like, you know what? I normally go after younger people, but this guy's just getting on my nerves. Stabby, stabby, stabby. But yeah, Sam Lewis's brother, whatever. But you know, movie we should revisit with Jewel.
What?
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Well, I think we should. I think if we sat down with him and watched it, he would enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm.
That was a rough weekend.
Yeah.
That was a rough weekend. But I enjoy the Halloween references. Here's the thing about, okay, so we've got the wrestling, we've got the Halloween. Let's talk, and let's talk in a proactive way. The only issue I have with wrestling is that I'm not that familiar with it.
Yeah, neither am I.
I can't really bring a lot to the table with that. Halloween I know a little bit more of. Here's the beautiful thing about those moments. They are and I really mean this. They are authentic demonstrations of a really deep love and something that brings a lot of positivity to his life and is a reliable framework to, judge other things by. And there is a consistency to that deep dish passion that I do admire. I really do admire.
Okay. Well, Joel, just because I know you're watching on YouTube, just know that we're saying this with appropriate love and affection, despite the thumbs down thing that you just may have saw on the screen in front of Patrick.
Did it do that? Did it do
yeah,
that?
it did that. Skype did
Lord.
that.
Joel, my hands were up here, and my eyes up here too. I don't know.
Yeah,
how
Joel, Patrick is behaving himself. I'm not.
I don't know how it decides to do these things, but it does.
Yep. Tonight I'm the bad role model, so
it's good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, but no, I think, and I think too, I think this film is. I also think this, My Dinner with Andre. I think, to be fair, it's not a film that you just kind of said, oh, okay, I'm going to go watch My Dinner with Andre. I think it's best for a certain kind of mood, a certain kind of feel, a certain kind of situation. So it's not like, say, oh, I'm going to put on this. I'm not going to, like, for me, it's like The Third Man. I love that film, but I don't watch it all the time. I have to be in a certain frame of mood.
It is a movie I do encourage you to watch again, and maybe put on while you're doing something, you're ironing clothes or something like that. It is a good companion movie, almost as if you are at the next table over. It's a very easy movie to listen to. And it is genuinely a movie where you will get a little. It is so rich in terms of all the weird stuff it talks about, and all the odd observations it makes. That you do get something a little different out of it every time you see it, and so I like that about it. It in its weird, arguably pretentious way, it still maintains an odd freshness every time I see it. And I want to solve it a little bit more every time I see it. And I want to sort of understand a little bit more about Andre Gregory, just because he is a really brilliant guy. And he's a guy who is very happily in the movie The Shadow as, the dispatcher.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was Burbank.
Yeah. It's like great. Andre Gregory's in that. Andre Gregory, appears again kind of as himself in an even weirder state of mind in a movie called Always by Henry Jaglom. And Henry Jaglom truly is the sort of self-absorbed character that Albert Brooks often pretends to be in movies, where he presents Albert Brooks or the Albert Brooks character. And Always is a really weird movie. It's this. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Is this improvised? All his movies are semi-improvised films. It's this improvised movie about dealing with signing his divorce papers from his wife that he shot. The Jaglom shot with his wife as they were signing their divorce papers. I mean, it's really, really a lot of weird, awkward layers of reality. And Jaglom he's still alive. He was the other big pal of Orson Welles's, besides Peter Bogdanovich, who also has moments of being insufferable. But Andre Gregory appears because they have this garden party just happens, and all these people show up, and Andre is one of them. He's his neighbor, and Andre Gregory has an observation in the film that I really, really, really liked, and it was this: in forming a relationship, the only thing that you have in common is that you can never truly know the other person. That there's always this, because of communication and consideration, all these other things, and just pure subjectivity, the fact that we're not psychic, there's always this distance. And I thought, what a cool, that observation may not be true for me, but it still is a really worthy one. And that just made that there is a, as pretentious as Andre Gregory gets, there are still moments of profound humility and fear that come up that erase a lot of the highfalutin nonsense. That's the thing. The second time through, what you'll see is all the times where he undercuts himself, which is nice. The first time through, it's just, who is this pompous ass? And the second time through, it's he's asking, who is this pompous ass, as the audience is asking it. Maybe not as vigorously, but he's asking it too.
Yeah, so it's like I said, it's not a bad film. It's just I found it hard to connect with it, simply because I think when you see it the first time, you're like, again, I was reminded of a sketch from The Kids in the Hall. Speaking of Orson Welles, where it's these two guys who are having a conversation in a diner, and one is like, "I saw this great movie last night." Oh, what was it? Citizen Kane. No, 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 no. It had Orson Welles and he was a newspaperman, Citizen Kane. And it goes back and forth where the one guy who's trying to tell him it's Citizen Kane gets so frustrated, he basically starts assaulting the other guy. Kids in the Hall, free on Tubi. Go watch it. Special usual. I think too, it's the kind of film that doesn't really get made anymore. I mean, even though it's a one of a shot thing, I mean, most indie films tend to be basically like, they may as well be mid-level, what Hollywood used to call mid-level films. They're not really arty, or they don't really do much except we're here. Except it's like, it's like something like The Bridges of Madison County would now be an indie film.
Yeah.
I can't believe I said that out loud.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Well, the whole landscape has changed. I remember when a lot of that went wacky was when you started getting art films that were just successful enough. This was early to mid '90s with Kevin Smith and Kevin Smith, and that and Miramax was getting just powerful enough. They might have been bought by Disney at that point. That you could justify having an art multiplex. And so art films could throw their weight around and demand runs of certain lengths. And at that point, the little guy who made a movie, not that Louis Malle was a little guy, I mean, this was a major independent film when it came out, but that the little guy like a Henry Jaglom could make his movie saying, you know what, I'm going to be lucky if I get this in a theater other than New York and LA. I'm lucky if I'm going to get this in a theater for a week. But we're going to aim it to be the sort of movie that a guy who runs a monoplex can show for a week as one of his 2 or 3 features. And then that's it. That's not that much of a risk to take. But if suddenly, you're having to deal with Miramax and you have a one-screen movie theater, this happened to the Vogue. You have a one-screen movie theater, and you're having to compete with this theater that says, oh yeah, we can show that we can book that for a 4-week run, maybe even a month. And suddenly, to compete with them, you have to commit to that. And if it lays an egg, you're stuck with the damn thing for a month, and it could kill your business. There you go. That's a lot of what happened.
Unlike Pink Flamingos, where I could see theater owners going, why would I want to show that? But it's based on the perception of the film, not what the film actually does.
And the owner might say, I can take a chance for a midnight show. Let's see how it does. It does pretty well. So you bring it back.
Yeah, and the shame is, I was reading an article about a lot of indie films of the 90s that have not been released on DVD, Blu-ray, etc., because they're trying to find out who originally distributed them, because not all indie movie distributors were snapped up by the majors. Like there's one called I Shot Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
Which it's I'm sure that someone will say, well, it's available streaming, but it's one where it's kind of hard to find a decent video copy, because some companies went out of business. Some companies just kind of folded. Some companies kind of went, oh, okay, well, we'll just leave that film there. we're talking the 90s. It's not like
Yeah.
we're saying. I mean, the fact that they found a 1916 silent Sherlock Holmes film in France about, it would have been 2016, 2017,
Huh?
and they restored it, and you can find a Blu-ray. But that movies from like 20, 30, almost 40 years ago, we can't find. That's a bit disconcerting.
It's a problem. Yeah. Well, and if there's not a good print of it, if there's not an archival print that's been kept around, it could very well vanish, unless these things get digitized. And even that's not perfect. Those hard drives degrade. I know that Lowry, I believe, goes in and replaces their hard drives every few years to make sure that they have fresh copies. That's the nice thing about a good physical copy is less stuff can go. Now, if something goes wrong, it goes catastrophically wrong, but there are fewer things that can go wrong with it.
Right. And that's why like film preservation is so important. Like to go to The Third Man, and yes, I'm referring to another episode that Patrick wasn't part of, but trust me on this one. When I saw it, it was in 91 for a college film study class. And at the time, it was public domain. And we saw the American version with Joseph Cotton narrating. It's the same narration, except he talks about how his friend brought him in for this charity he's running. In 98, there's like the first major restoration where they removed all the acid and water damage and the cigarette marks and everything. And that company was Rialto Pictures, which got taken over by Studio Canal, which is a European media company. And so part of the reason why we can watch it now is that someone, that a company was, so a small studio said, "Hey, let's restore this," and it was public domain, so they didn't have to worry about the rights.
Yeah.
And so they restored it, and now we can enjoy this. We enjoy a pretty decent film. It's kind of the converse of what happened with It's a Wonderful Life, where the Republic Pictures said, "Oh, hey, we own the music, so let's file the copyright on that," which is good because that's a stupid movie. I hate that movie.
It's a very problematic film.
Yeah,
that's a movie we should talk about at some point because I got a lot of issues with that film, specifically wiping out an entire universe, which is what happens in it. The George Bailey wipes out an entire universe. That may in some ways, in ways that we don't see, but historically now we can look back and think might be superior to Bedford Falls. Specifically in terms of diversity and medical care. That's a different conversation. The one thing you mentioned them getting rid of with The Third Man that I actually think is worth keeping around, and those are the cigarette burns. And the reason why I think it's important to keep cigarette burns in a movie is that those are the cues for the projectionist.
Right.
And that tells, and that is for me, because that is part of the visual life of the movie. It's part of the text. And it's a sort of a meta cinematic part of the text. It's still part of the text. And it is a tiny reminder of rhythm in the movie of, okay, we're changing the reel. And often these films were broken down plot-wise, even in terms of this reel is doing more of this reel is doing more of that. And as someone who's a former projectionist, I have a lot of nostalgia for knowing a movie broken down that way. And so I miss cigarette burns privately. Now, I haven't seen one on a video release in forever. I think that was one of the first things that they sort of a little Photoshop heel over.
So. Yeah, most videos are now done primarily on video. And so very few are actually, or they're done on film but transferred to digital. So it kind of, and there's something, especially watching old films on Tubi, there's something about the grain that feels very organic. And I know it
has a texture to it. It has a life to it. It's a physical thing.
Right.
And I like that. I like it that it's more than just ones and zeros, that we're seeing an alchemical act chemistry.
And you can also see, and this is, I think, what Pink Flamingos has, is that there's a real sense of this is the vision that I want to put out.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. Not this kind of, yes, YouTube viewers, we're two old men, telling those darn kids to get off our lawn. But everything just feels so, because everything is so based on IP and franchises. I mean, the thing that was surprising, and I wanted to thank you for giving me a heads up on it, is Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix, because that's one where, I mean, I loved it, and it's one where you could kind of see where it maybe the conception was around the time of the cinematic universe idea, but what they do with Poe, and it's also a couple of years ago, I wrote a short story. I was asked to write a short story for. The premise is Edgar Allan Poe, time traveler. And so my story idea, spoilers, and it's maybe, it may not be what the one you would think of, but, I had Edgar Allan Poe get involved with a writer of a Dark Shadows type soap opera in the 60s, but it's out of Chicago. That's fictional. So I really had to deep dive into not just biographies, but also I reread a lot of his stuff. And I also found an audio collection with his stories being read by Basil Rathbone and Vincent Price.
Oh.
And one of the great things, so I have Poe on the brain, and Poe is the latest street drug. It's better than heroin, but in reading his work, you can see how much of it is just based on the idea of, I think what the series does is it takes the idea of madness, of you do not trust the narrator. He relies on unreliable narrators. His horror is more about the dawning that you are going mad, that there is a lot of jealousy. And I mean, the only thing I didn't like about it is that I think there are two speeches at the end that Bruce Greenwood and I forget the actress's name do about drugs and generations that feel a little bit too finger pointy for my taste. But I don't think they don't ruin it. I just think it's at some point, the preceding 7 hours were so great, and so I think on that note, we've talked plenty, but I think it's safe to say, to summarize, we both like Pink Flamingos. Mixed reaction, and a mixed reaction to my dinner with Andre.
I would say that's fair.
Okay,
so and I totally get your reaction to My Dinner with Andre.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use the term like challenge, but I invite you to watch it again at some late, 10 years down the line, and just kind of having expectations, see what it's like then.
No problem. Well, I want to thank Patrick for joining me. Jewel, I hope you're getting better. Like, share, subscribe this. If you must, please send Patrick and I money, baked goods.
A vote for the Rondo.
Right. Yeah. Vote for Patrick for the Rondo by April 16th.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jewel, when you put it in the notes, be sure it's there. Thank you so much, and all of you have a good night.
Thank you, Gordon. Take care.
You too. Night.
Hang on. I have to figure out how to stop the insanity, stop the recording. This is just going to go on and on. Turn off. I'm not
Let me
sure.
see if let me see. I've got to